everyone. Welcome to this lovely chat we're going to be having today with Ketki, the co-founder of BHyve. I'm sure by now you have already gone through the case study that we've shared with you. In lines to that, we thought you must hear the entire story from the horse's mouth. And that is why I have Ketki here. Ketki, would you like to start with, narrating your story in terms of how did you get started? What was your inspiration, to start BHyve?
Um, Hi, Rashmita. Thank you so much for having me on your series. It's really wonderful to connect with budding entrepreneurs. And true to what we do at BHyve, learning from people who have been there and done that is the most helpful thing that an entrepreneur can get. So happy to share a couple of notes that I have. I hope they help people ahead. Quick introduction. I'm Ketki Ogle, one of the co-founders of BHyve. We are an enterprise SaaS platform where we build intelligent knowledge networks for large companies. Our goal of doing this is to make employees' lives more enrichful by having the correct knowledge accessible to them in real time.
What is the problem that you're trying to solve, and what exactly are your current offerings right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, BHyve was built because we noticed that across sectors, industries, geographies, the most valuable information that an employee has is contextual experience based knowledge. It's where somebody has when they get stuck because say they're on a shop floor and a machine is making a noise, they will reach out to their manager or their VP and say, listen, you've been in this situation before, what does this noise mean? And they say, oh, this means you're going to need to do a maintenance checkup in the next week or so. Now, this kind of knowledge cannot be shared through textbooks. It can't be shared through online courses. It is hands-on, experience-based learnings that employees only get when they work. There is a 70-20-10 principle of learning, which says that 70% of the learning that we implement in our work comes from our surroundings. It comes from making mistakes and then realizing that we shouldn't do this
Absolutely.
anymore. Then another 20% comes from talking to people. It's where you're sitting over maybe a coffee, or you're having lunch together, and you say, "Arey yaar, ye bahut takleef ho rahi hai. I'm not able to do this. I'm trying to crack, say, this code and it's not coming through." And then somebody says, listen, wait, I have seen this before. This is where it was used. Here's a library. And they give you some reference. They give you, that little cue that you need to sort of charge forth. So that 20% is another critical piece of information that employees need at the right time to be able to do their work. And then finally, the 10%, which is your structured classroom training. For us, we realize that 70 and 20 don't get invested enough by companies. It becomes lip service for them to say, we want to build a community around our employees. We want to make sure that employees are connected, informed, and educated and aware and deriving from experiences. But there's very little actual software infrastructure to do this. And then that this problem only gets aggravated when you look at a remote distributed hybrid sort of a workforce. You'd have, in large companies, people sitting across multiple branches or multiple office locations. You'd have, thousands of people who are feet on street. They're going out and doing sales or talking to vendors on the go. You may also have people who are based out of different geographies. So somebody catering to, say, the Middle East market, somebody catering to Southeast Asia. And a lot of insights can really be shared by them to be able to make business decisions that are more informed, faster, and drive business goals better. But there's no platform to do this. And that's where we said, hey, can we build a BHyve where when I'm stuck at a challenge, I ask a question. I may not know who has the answer. I may not personally be working with them or introduced to them, but they can quickly get me an answer in a contextual setup. It should also be a setup where um, I'm not concerned about if I share this information, it is very confidential. I might get fired from my job. Because you have, say, the Stack Overflows of the world, but you can't paste an actual code there. So, a protected company environment where you can comfortably ask questions was the first thing that we thought of we need. The second is, okay, I may do a Q&A, but I may want more insights. I may want to learn something from somebody. If there's a person who's been in the industry for say 20, 25 years, I want to gain from their experience. And so can there be mentor bridges that get built where if say an employee is joined new in the company, can they learn about the culture? Can they learn about best practices from these mentors? Became the second thing that we said there should be a platform to do this. All of this happens in a very unstructured manner. It doesn't get recognized, it doesn't get rewarded. And so the second thing was getting mentorship for whatever you need. And then the third thing was, can all of this intelligence be available with AI on a network where um, because of say unavailability, I'm not able to access Rashmita's knowledge because she's in a meeting or she's caught up or she's probably left the company. But if she has documented her insights, her best practices, her knacks, failures, success stories, tips for doing certain things, how can we make the company knowledge attrition proof? Of course, you can't stop your employees, but can you document all of their knowledge, build almost like a brain for a company that can float independently and make sure that the company's best practices get carried forward? And then so that's why the genesis of BHyve came. It's an intelligence network that um, almost becomes like a breathing Wikipedia for the organization.
Situations change, right? The corporate norms change, policies change. So how did you ensure that you create a plan which is foolproof, to be able to make a sustainable plan?
Yeah. So to be honest, when we came up with the idea of BHyve, there were two sort of use cases at a broad level that we, the idea that an employee base is a community that can learn from each other, and that a student base is a community that can learn from each other. And both ideas are very compelling. Both ideas also hold true the fact that employees or students are social in nature and they derive energy from each other to thrive. And so the first conversation that we have to have was, where do we see a valid monetization model? Who would pay for this kind of a software? Um, how much if you know, one of the critical things we always think about is, you have a software, people are using it, and you take it away, who would it hurt the most? And those were some questions that we went through to decide that the corporate setup would be critical to, or would be the ideal setup where we could have a platform like this. It was also where we realized that when you look at a networks product like BHyve, there are essentially three parties that are um, coming together for the success of the platform. One is, of course, us as the creators of the software. The second is the corporate, the owners of the companies, or you know, the HR team or the tech team that sort of rolls out the product. They become the stakeholders, and then you finally have the end users who are going to be using the product day in and day out. And so that angle had to be brought in to say, what's in it for me, what's in it for a company, and what's in it for a user. If you are able to create a model where all three of them would get hurt if this shut tomorrow, then you know that you are building an idea that is a must have for all the parties involved. So that was sort of the filter that we went through, and we decided the corporate setup where we could sell the software would be the right place to start off. Once we had that in place, we went through a bunch of different software solutions that companies were using currently. What is an ideal toolkit? How much do people spend on it? How, what is the usage and behavior pattern? You know, primarily for digital products, there are two types of products that exist. And I'll give like a very simple example for both. You have the Facebook kind of products where they make money when people come on the platform and spend time on the platform because they're advertiser platforms. So more you scroll, the more ads you see, that much more revenue Facebook makes. So it is imperative for them to build a product where stickiness is very high and you are, you know, you're hooked onto it for a lot of time. The metric that they also measure is the time people spend on the platform. Whereas you have, say, something like an Uber, where you want to come, quickly get a cab and you want to get out of the platform. If you're wasting too much time because you're not getting a cab for say 15 minutes and your wait time is longer, that's bad for the product. And so that was another critical lens we had to go through to say, okay, we want our product to be the second kind. We want people to come, quickly share their knowledge or quickly ask questions, get a solution, and get out and go back to work. We don't want to build a platform where employees are, posting GIFs and cat memes and photographs and so on and so forth, and using it as an excuse to not do work. This has to be a enabler platform. And so that again became a critical thing that we sort of put as our benchmark or our goal to say, how can we build a platform where people come, get their work done, and get out quickly. That also says that we don't do advertising, so that closed off a revenue channel for us. We don't sell data, we don't do advertising, and we wanted to stick with those values of, of, of us as founders and the product we're building. And so we came down to say that, all right, we will be a SaaS platform, we will be a subscription based platform where companies will buy it because they see the larger goal and vision, and the longevity of intelligence that it can give to a company, and they will roll it out for their employees. Multiple of these checks, we realized that a simple software as a solution business model would work well for BHyve. We would have a champion stakeholder at every company whose KPI would be to roll out a platform that encourages knowledge sharing. We also sort of did a little bit of deep diving into the why. So eventually, when you talk about knowledge sharing, and people have been trying to do it for 20, 25 years, the critical thing to ask is, why would employees come and share knowledge? What's in it for them? So one of the layers that sits on top of BHyve is an entire rewards gamification recognition module. And so we put that in place to bring incentive and a hook into the product, because without a hook, what is your product, right? So for us, we built out that whole gamification module as the hook to the platform. And that's how we built sort of the foundation of what BHyve is today. Once we had the basic framework of what we wanted to do, and there was a significant amount of research that went into something as basic as, if we build this, one is, what do we build it with? So the tech plan had to come in place first. That what would be the right technology? Would it be a web application? Would it be a mobile platform? Where would people use it? How often would people use it? What is our benchmark? Should we expect them to come once a week or thrice a week or every day? Some of those questions had to be answered, and the technology solution had to be built around that. Then came saying, okay, once we buy it, once we build it, who's going to buy it from us? So we had to get into understanding what are the different types of organizations, what are the different sizes of organizations, which organizations have this problem the most. So we, between the three of us as founders, we ended up speaking with almost 150 to 200 stakeholders. When you're selling a product, it is very important to have one person who believes and understands what value you are driving for them. Then that person in that company can be the champion for making sure that the rest of the team comes aboard. And so after, and this is an evolving process, right? We started on day one and we're still doing it today, where we refine who we're talking to, refine how we talk to them, and so on and so forth. So for our business plan, the first thing we did was we defined our market sectors. So we said, okay, we're based in India, we're building for India, so we're gonna, in our first year at least, we focused on the India market. We said, also for SaaS, while the West is the Mecca, it's great to have India as sort of a training ground where you can try, experiment with things, build a robust product, and then take it out to the West once you have good case studies, success stories, the pitfalls, and you're able to avoid them. So we said, okay, let's start off with building for India. Then we said, okay, in India, what are the types of organizations? We realized that the kind of product BHyve is, it would suit well for companies that are large in nature. So our benchmark was set as, when you filter a list of companies, go through companies that are 200 plus or 500 plus, because that's where you would have a gap in communication. That's where you would have the silos that BHyve can break. So that became step two of deciding what size of companies. Then came the conversation of which type of companies. So we were very fortunate when Hindalco was our first sort of hit, and they said that, hey, we definitely want this, and they made us realize that manufacturing would be a very good category because it's an underserved market, it's a knowledge intensive market, and building a solution for manufacturing would obviously be a wide range of users or sort of clients that we can target. And so industry wise, we defined what are the parameters we're looking for in terms of how we would select our potential clients. So we had a checklist created, almost like some 15 columns and 20 some rows of checklist created to say, okay, we want companies that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things in place. We want them to be from certain sectors. We want them to be from a certain size. And that's how we built the answer to the question, who would we sell to, right? Then came saying, how would we talk to them, right? And that's where the marketing of how do we market BHyve, right? So we early in our conversations we'd come up with the name BHyve. It is inspired from hive intelligence of bees, and so how do you communicate that idea through maybe blogs or through in industry pieces or any kind of intelligence where you explain the need of the product in a very straightforward, in a simple manner was very important. So the marketing plan basically revolved around getting the communication right, what terms we want to use, what is the industry data that gets utilized. We did a lot of research to understand how different industries um, sort of percolate knowledge. So in tech companies, what are the knowledge platforms they use? In manufacturing, what is the technology that they use? How can we have work in sync with those? How should we structure that message where it sort of just makes them feel like, yes, I want this, right? So something like going and telling the CEO of a company that, hey, did you know that your employees waste 2 hours a day looking for information? And that if those 2 hours were reduced to say 15 minutes, your employees would actually be able to either do more work or have or go back home early and have a more well balanced life, or do something innovative with the rest of the time that they have on their hands. And so, how can that messaging be brought in? Websites, social media, blogs, other forms of content, white papers, use cases. How would it work across for all the industries? So, getting that was the third thing in place. So, first was the market, second was the business model, third was the marketing, and then came the team. So of course, early on, it was just the three of us as founders. We used to wing everything, do from design to writing to coding to we had to build a team. At some point, we realized that we need more hands on board. We said, okay, we want to have higher people. One is you need the funds to do it. We were very fortunate where, based on two things, which was a good solid concept and a letter of intent from Hindalco, we were able to raise our first set of funds. We got in about $300,000. With the commitment of that money, we were able to hire our first engineer. Today, he's VP of technology for us, and he's one of the most critical pieces of our game. And then, of course, the team is now grown to be 10 people. So when we hire, we sort of think about, I mean, I personally sort of think about two things. One is, are they smarter than me? Because I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to have people who challenge me, who bring in a new form of or a new knowledge about
New perspective.
a new
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
And so, does this person know something that I don't? And can they teach it to me? Because that's where we're all able to grow together and build a better beehive. So, is this person more intelligent than me? And the second question I always ask, and I think all of us subconsciously do it at BHyve, is, would I want to hang out with them on a weekend? Like, would I have fun hanging out with them outside of office hours? Because when you're building a startup and you hire your first 10, 20, or 50 people, it's very important to sort of love being with them. So that's where we set about um, putting up putting together almost a formula of how we hire at BHyve. Of course, all our early hires were tech, because when you're building a software, you need the right coders. So we first brought in 4 to 5 people on the tech side to build out the entire app that it is today. And then we've now started hiring on the non-tech side, where we have one person looking at customer success, one person looking at business development and sales for us. We're now going to get maybe a couple more people to help with operationals and things like that.
Can you please explain about your competition analysis? How did you go about, in doing that due diligence and in research? And how did you factor in competition while making your business plan? And were there any tweaks into your business model or your business plan that you made with respect to competition as such?
The conversations with we had early stage really helped us. So CHROs told us stories. कि अरे 20 साल पहले we had tried this thing, and then they gave us notes about why it didn't work. In fact, I just day before yesterday had a conversation with a very large Indian bank, and they also said, hey, we've been trying to do this since 2010. First time we tried, this is what went wrong. Second time we tried, this is what went wrong. And so a lot of those conversations told us about people's successes and failures with the concept as it is, right? We got to know like a fragrance company, a global fragrance company with its headquarters in France, which you would completely not expect to have a solid tech product, has a very, very robust tech solution to take care of all of its intelligence. So that was very helpful for us to know that there are versions of this that companies have already implemented, and what went right or wrong with them, right? Um, uh, Google has something like this, TCS has something like this. So those learnings, Accenture has something like this, and those learnings were very important. Then we started looking at the keywords around what we were building. So we said, okay, peer learning. And then you look through that, and then you find a bunch of different competitors who do peer learning, either as mentorship or as student peer learning, or so on and so forth. What is important when, especially when you're building a startup, is that you will realize this, that you may not find somebody who's 100% competitor, who does exactly the 10 things that you decide to do, but who do pieces of what you do. And so you have to be cognizant to take them also as competitors, because you are building 10 features, they probably are focusing on 4 right now, but they could easily start building the next 6 and become a full-fledged competitor, right? So for us now, we look at 3 sets of, actually 4 sets of competitors for BHyve. 3 of those are actual competitors based on the features and the value that we offer. The 4th, and I'll speak a little bit later about it in detail, is a set of perception competitors. So talking about the first 3, the primary things that BHyve enables you to do is ask questions and get answers instantly. So there is something like a Stack Overflow or a Quora which does this. And now Stack Overflow has come up with actually a business version of this tool which large companies can use within the company. So feature wise or an offering wise, Stack Overflow becomes one of our primary competitors because they offer the same Q&A format that we do. Then we looked at peer-to-peer learning. How can mentor bridges be built? And then we realized that there's a platform called Together, there's a platform called 360 Learning, which does, there were a couple of others which also failed, which also do mentor matchmaking. So there'll be a software, it'll have profiles, and then people are given mentors who they can sort of connect with, learn from, follow a complete mentoring roadmap with. And so not just having a broad sense of understanding of competitors, but specific feature wise, who do you compete with is very critical. So first was, like I said, the Q&A format where we have Stack Overflow for teams as somebody we definitely go face head to head with. The second is in the peer learning or the mentoring part where we have some companies. And then the third is the knowledge sharing, the knowledge network that we build, the Wikipedia. And there again, you have a Starmind, which is a Swiss company. You have Bloomfire, which is a Texas, Austin-based company. You have a Guru, which is another US-based company who sort of do exactly just that in terms of the feature that we have as knowledge sharing. And so all of these are competitors we have to keep an eye on constantly. We have to keep an eye on them from a design perspective to see that what is sort of the design tonality that they go for, whether it is their website or it is their app, or it is in terms of the messaging that they do. So how do they explain a particular feature? How do they make people understand the value of that feature? What sort of data do they use to back it? So one of our strongest, like I said, pitches to CEOs is your employees are wasting 2 hours a day. What data do they use instead when they are making their pitch? So a lot of these things we keep in mind for all the three sets of competitors that we have. And then comes the fourth category, which is a perception based competitor. Now, this usually you face when you start talking to clients. You talk to clients and they, whatever the understanding they have of the product, they'll be like, "Arey, par ye tool to hai, ye to karta hai." So we get a lot of people asking us, "Hamare paas Microsoft Teams hai. Why should we get BHyve?" And so while it is not an actual competitor because it doesn't really have the same feature set, in the minds of our potential clients, it's a competitor. And so we have to know about its features, see if there is a way where we can work with them. So we're in the process of actually building an integration with Teams right now because we don't think of Teams as a competitor, we think of it as an enabler. Then once you have the list, go into details of what the features they have, what is their roadmap, what is their pricing. That can be very helpful. Knowing what sort of customers do they target, right? So with each competitor, we actually have a list of the sectors that they target because we of course have our own sectors that we target. So if we know somebody like a Starmind also targets the same sectors, then we need to be more careful about them. We need to keep more frequent touch to see what they're up to. Sector or market also tells us the pricing. So because we are in India, which is a price sensitive market, we define our pricing in a certain way. We're not going to go and charge a $6 or $8 or $10 like some of our competitors do, because we understand that that's not going to work in the Indian industry, Indian geography. So take your competitors' knowledge, learn who invests in them because they could be potential investors for you. Learn who buys them because they could be potential clients you could steal from. Learn about what features they tried and failed and why. So that helps you understand how to shape your roadmap. Learn what are the partnerships they have, right? So like an Edcast, which is sort of a competitor with us, works with Degree. So it helps to know that so that you can also frame your own partnerships accordingly. So this is like a larger piece around how to think about competitors. Go beyond your regular comparison of replacements, but think about complementary products also, and always keep an eye on them. We have like a channel in our conversation where we just post insights about all of our competitors. We've even gone to the extent of creating dummy IDs and having fake demos done with most of our competitors to study their entire feature set, understand how, ask them tricky questions, right? The questions that you possibly get from your clients, ask them those questions and see how they answer it. And so yeah, that's sort of, and you have to keep doing it. It's a constant process. Every conversation we have tells us about a new competitor who may be out there. So tough but fun thing to do. One biggest thing which I think we were able to understand from our competitors is the kind of integrations that they do. Now, SaaS is a very integration heavy, integration oriented space where your tool needs to talk to the 10 other tools that the company is using. And for us, every time we go and check on your competitor, we see who are the integrations that they have. And then we say, okay, how do we work with these guys? Can we reach out and do the same partnerships? How does a competitor use maybe Salesforce? How can we use Salesforce? So that literally determines our product roadmap. It also tells us what not to do, right? Like if you see that, so to give an example, one of the things that we've decided not to do is produce our own content. because we saw some of the competitors who produce their own content, and then that becomes um, like a whole separate product offering that we don't want to get into, where it will get, then it has to get
Mm.
customized, it has to get, for every industry sector market, it becomes like a huge load
Yeah.
for and unnecessary. SaaS doesn't have to be like that. SaaS doesn't have to be personalized. So we saw some of our competitors do content creation and then struggle with it, and then we said, okay, we've learned our lesson, we're not going to get into that route. um, Integrations was one where we definitely take a lot of insights from how our competitors play out. Pricing, again, like I said, is important. um, the last thing I think that we take for sure from our competitors is how do they bring out the customer experience, right?
Okay.
So with every app, competitor app that we try, we think of um, the design. What is a feature called? How do they explain it? Do they do a pop-up tutorial kind of thing? Do they have like a straightforward blog that you just have to read and figure out? How is their customer support? um, when you raise a ticket, how much time does it take for the ticket to get resolved? Like,
Mm-hmm.
these are softer parts of the user experience that um, we don't give a lot of focus to normally, but we should. And so we take a lot of that learning also from seeing what's out there, and then and that sort of, that goes beyond our competitors, right? So if we, like, one of the things I love is I'm a big user of Notion, and
Mm-hmm.
I love the emails that come from Notion when they explain a new product feature. And so that's a learning that we're imbibing into us at BHyve, where we send out detailed notes to explain how a feature works. And it could be in the form of a GIF, it can be in the form of a video also. And so, how, building a product is one part of it. Sustaining the product and growing it is where also there's a lot of small,
Absolutely.
interesting learning
Yeah.
bits that we get from the market.
Can you talk a little bit about your go-to-market strategy
Yeah.
for your business?
Um, so one is, we're really fortunate where all three founders have incredible social capital. We have two of our fathers are from the HR industry, so we have a huge
Oh.
network of, and that was also, one of the reasons why we jumped into it so quickly. We knew that we had a backing of people who would make us meet the right people.
Hmm.
So always, social capital is very critical. How can you go out there and make conversations and get people um, to listen to you and take notice of you and then follow through? So our first conversations that opened doors for us were through these introductions, through some of the conversations we had in the network, friends, their fathers, our fathers, so on and so forth. And that became our primary go to market. At that point of time, it was just, again, the three of us. So we would be making calls all the time and, figuring out who to talk to is the right people. Then we slowly built out LinkedIn. When you have a website, you have your social, you have your blog, you start doing LinkedIn outreach, and that becomes your second sort of channel to find and discover potential clients. Um, the third, so and then comes the next versions of it, which is emails. You send out emails and then you interact with people and they reply to your email. You set up a website, you set up the right cookies and crumbles around the internet, and then you backlink it to your website and people come and book a demo. So that becomes our primary go-to market today, which is true sales that we do single-handedly. The second is looking for the right partners. So how can you leverage either an established player whose services are complementary to yours, or an industry, say, community or group who can help you find potential clients. Um, so for us, we look at partnerships with other HR tech companies and say that, hey, can we do like a cross sell where, if there is somebody looking for a knowledge platform, you would recommend BHyve, and on the inverse, if somebody is looking for, say, an HRMS solution, we would recommend you. So that those partnerships become a second GTM for us. where we look at partners helping each other grow together simultaneously. Um, the third is investors and partners ourselves, right? So the incubators we work with, the investors we work with, they bring in their own network of companies, of CEOs, where we usually go and then speak, whether it is a demo day with our investor or it is like a business conclave with one of our accelerator partners. So that becomes like a third go-to market that we use, which is the network that we've now built over the last almost 2 years on BHyve. And then the fourth is corporate accelerators, right? You Most companies work and have like their corporate accelerators that you can apply to. You can they give out a specific problem statement and they say, hey, companies that can address this problem for us, come and apply, do a pitch, show us some numbers around how you have done this successfully, and then you get a pilot with them also. And so that becomes the fourth go-to-market that we have, which is through these corporate accelerators. We recently just got selected into Accenture's program like this, where we were picked as one of the top 5 women-led startups in the country. And so then Accenture now becomes our sales partner. They will sell BHyve for us instead of us having to do a lot of the legwork. So these are the four: the traditional sales that we do ourselves, partnerships that we do with other HR tech companies, investors, incubators, and such network that we have, and then the fourth is corporate accelerators we apply to.
So one last question, about your, future plans. What's your way ahead?
Yeah. So we are a growing company. We've just sort of gotten to a place where we have a product market fit. We have use cases for all the 4 sectors that we are targeting, whether it is manufacturing or BFSI or healthcare or startups, high growth startups. So when you set up your go to market strategy, the strategy is always land and expand. So right now for India, we're in the expand stage. We already have 10 paying clients and we want to turn that 10 into 100 very quickly. On the other side, we're also looking to expand internationally. We came always with the knowledge that SaaS is the real mecca for SaaS is your West, where you have the US, UK, Europe, where they have the budgets to spend large monies on this. And so while we do expand in India, we will be doing land in the US, where we will have dipping our first toes in. Where all founders are going to be traveling there, meeting with customers, sort of a repeat of the same exercise that we did in India about a year and a half ago, but with a product ready in hand, but with case studies in hand, say, hey, this is how it has worked so far with these clients. And then use that as a way to get some of our early clients in the West. The larger goal is to, like I said, we're chasing the 2 million ARR for at the end of 2022 in March. And then that sets us on a path to be one of the fastest growing SaaS companies from India. And then we look at building out these sort of 4 verticals where you say that we become the tool of choice for that industry, saying, what are you as a manufacturing company if you don't have a BI?
Really a pleasure connecting with you, Ketki. I think with this note, I'd like to end this conversation here. And I really wish you all the very best for the future and the success of your business. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rashmita. Happy to do this. We look forward to more founders, more female founders, building more of BHyves from India with this.
Crossing fingers. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.